Bloodlines 2. If this is a game that you're excited for, I'm selling some fine leather jackets because you are gullible. This game is a sham, we've known it for a long time, and just to give a quick summary of what's gone on the past 7 years, Bloodlines 2 was announced, Paradox Entertainment, they were the publisher behind it, and they had Hardsuit Labs working on the game. This was a studio with zero RPG experience. The only thing they really had going for them was that they brought in Brian Mitsoda, the original creator of Bloodlines, to work on the game, and it sounded okay, people were willing to give it a chance, but then things went pear-shaped. Brian was fired. Eventually, the game was back with Paradox. Hardsuit Labs were moved on. They were incapable of making Bloodlines 2, making the sequel to the original great game. And Paradox stewed for a little bit, but they eventually, this isn't confirmed, but I would almost be certain of this. It just makes sense. What seemed to have happened is Sumo Digital, a publisher responsible for making some very middling titles. Sure, there's been some okay ones they've been responsible for or have published. They've got a number of studios that they manage. They went to Paradox and they said, hey, you wasted all that time with Hardsuit Labs trying to develop the game. It didn't work out. How about we cobble the game together in 2 or 3 years, release it, and you can get some of your money back. Maybe you'll even turn a profit if we get enough suckers to buy this game. So that seems to be the priority. Sumo Digital, they've got a studio, the Chinese Room, and they are the ones developing this. Now, the Chinese Room, they've also, like Hardsuit Labs, never made a role-playing game before. In fact, they've barely made games with gameplay. I don't want to shit on them too much. Everyone's got their niche. I've played a Chinese Room game, Amnesia, The Machine of Pigs, I think it was called. It was the Amnesia sequel that was not as good as the original Dark Descent, at least in my opinion, and most people seem to agree. But anyway, they make games where story focus, sure, characters, atmosphere, but certainly no gameplay, certainly no RPGs where there's combat and there's real choices to be made. Real exploration. There's not really a lot of that. And what I've got for you today is the creative director at the Chinese Room, who is making Bloodlines 2. He did an interview not too long ago. And I really want to listen in here because we've seen the trailer to Bloodlines 2, the revamped trailer of what they're going to be doing, but I'm really interested to hear it from the people themselves, to hear how excited they might be, and if they can convince me that this game is going to be anything but a shit show, because I am yet to be convinced. I will say that I'm not going to go into the game wanting to hate it. I will be the first to say if I'm proven wrong and this game is incredible, I'm an idiot. Happy to say it. Happy to eat my words and say you've produced brilliance in just 3 years, given Hardsuit Labs were moved on and then this studio picked it up only in 2021, and they apparently say it in this video. So 3 years development if it does come out next year, and we're going to hear exactly what they've got to say.
Hi, I'm Alex Skidmore, Creative Director on Bloodlines 2. Yeah, we announced that Bloodlines 2 is going to come out fall 24, and
so the person speaking here, this is the creative director. His name is Alex Skidmore, and I do want to say that he's probably been dealt a bad hand. It's not as if it was his greatest passion in life to come in and really just rush out an RPG in the shortest time as possible. I hope not anyway. His resume suggests it's not the case. He is a genuine creative director. He's worked on titles. Again, the Chinese Room, they've only made walking simulators, but they have hired new people for this project. And one of them is Alex, and he has worked on games like Gears Tactics. Probably not really a game anyone cares about, but at least it is a game with combat, and it's something. It's more than the walking sims. That is a defense I've heard, that because Chinese Room have hired new people, it means we can't criticize. But really, it's just the same problem. Hardsuit Labs were criticized because they hadn't made an RPG. They didn't have the experience to give audiences confidence that they would make something as good as Bloodlines 1, which has a cult following. It is beloved. So Chinese Room just feels like more of the same, but with less development time. Hardsuit Labs were on this for years, and now the Chinese Room are having to do it in 3 years, complete the entire game. Hardsuit Labs couldn't do it.
The Chinese Room is making it. And we're feeling, well, we've had a hell of a day. Euphoric and potentially also coming out the other side. But yeah, it's been emotional.
So what are some of the challenges when you're handed a project that another studio has been working on and have to continue their work?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say we're continuing their work. So when we took it on in 2021, so there's a bit of a time gap between it sort of stopping and us starting, we set aside, well, what would we do with Vampire the Masquerade? What's the Chinese Room's answer to a vampire action RPG? So it is our...
Well, I would say that their answer should be in the spirit of Bloodlines 1. I don't really care so much about the Chinese Room spin on a vampire game. This is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. This is not just a random game in the Vampire the Masquerade universe. I think it's something that people, fans of projects like these, and certainly the developers sometimes forget, is there are fans of Bloodlines 1, who do not actually care that much about the Vampire the Masquerade universe. They don't really care about the tabletop game so much. They are fans of the original mid-2000s released Bloodlines 1. And when you announce that you're making a sequel, they expect it to live up to the name of the original, or at least not be an embarrassment compared to the original. That is going to be their reference point. They expect it to at least be in the spirit, not for you to just go, oh, we're going to do our own thing. Unfortunately, studios do seem to do that, but it is the expectation. So the Chinese Room, if you're going to do anything, it should be in the spirit of the original game. I don't really care so much about your take on things. I only will if you actually do a decent job.
Story, our world, our gameplay, and we very much focus on how could we faithfully adapt the 5th edition of VTM into a gameplay experience, right? It's a bit like adapting, a book to a film. You have to make certain creative choices.
Fine.
It's very much our vision, but we did benefit from all the great work that had already been done on Seattle, right? So we've got some of the characters in the trailer. They pre-existed. We've given them different backgrounds, different names, different personalities and stuff, but they pre-existed. And also certain hero locations in Seattle, such as this one. This is the Macon.
I don't really care about it being set in Seattle. Now, that's fine for this developer and maybe for some people, but if you haven't heard it in my accent, I'm not from Seattle. I do not really care about that. It could be set in a fictional setting for all I care. I just want a game that has good exploration, the locations make sense for the game, Seattle, any other city, whatever. I hope that's really not the focus. And to hear them talk about the great work that was done previously in Seattle, I know that this guy probably has to say that, but just hearing that grinds my gears, because great work was not done. That is why Hardsuit Labs were pulled off the game. Brian was fired. Paradox spat in the faces of original fans. So there was absolutely nothing positive from that. I don't believe that. And I've heard this before, he might go over some of this, that Chinese Room, they're actually taking some of the work from Hardsuit Labs and using that in this project. I don't like the sound of that. I can't imagine anything positive is going to come from it. Maybe some of the story work that was done. I think Chris Avallone had some involvement at some point. Maybe they'll take that. Maybe he did some decent work. Maybe Brian did some decent work. But I really hope they're not taking anything from the gameplay and some of these people who were involved who just clearly didn't do a bad job. Paradox wouldn't have thrown all their money down the drain if they were producing something of quality. I don't believe it. So we'll see what's going on.
Bar in the game, so it's in the trailer as well.
So you don't have to. So in a sense, you're not starting from scratch. You do use some of the other stuff that's been created.
Yeah, I mean, just Seattle.
Yeah.
We were like, well, why not? It was there already, and the more we looked at it, it was like, yeah, it seems a really cool place to set a vampire game.
The only
right?
other game I
Don't
can think of
care.
that ever did that was Prototype, I think, right? Prototype took place in Seattle, I believe.
Yes, I think it's underused a bit by games, Seattle. And then you're coming here, and it is a city, sort of established in the mid-1800s, so it's sort of got some old, got a lot of new. So it's an interesting place to tell a vampire story, because you also have the old.
Something else I want to mention is the trailer that was shown and what is kind of spoken about with Bloodlines 2 it is not a coincidence that you never really see real gameplay. They have shown what looks like gameplay, where you have the character clearly in first person and it looks like stuff is going on. I don't even necessarily believe that that's gameplay, because how many times have we seen where a studio will show you a video and it looks genuine, it looks like, hey, I'm going to be able to do this when I buy the game, but then it turns out that it's literally just a video that's been created, a 3D animation. Anthem is the perfect example of that. They showed the original Anthem trailer, I think it was at an E3, and the developers, they showed it off, acted like it was going to be something really great, and they later admitted that the game didn't exist then. It was essentially just a 3D video. There's been no coding that's gone on. You can't pick up the controller and play it. It's simply a video. And I'm not convinced that's not what we've been seeing in these Bloodlines 2 trailers. So I'm yet to be kind of proven to that it is genuine gameplay. So that to me is a concern. Baldur's Gate 3 is the perfect example of where the devs, the publisher, are happy to show you what they've got, because they released early access years before the game really took off in sales and we got all the hype around the recent release. You will not see that with Bloodlines 2, because they will hide as much as possible, because they know launch sales are all they're really going to get. As soon as it's obvious to the general public that it is rubbish, that's where I'm leaning. I can't believe it's going to be anything but. They're basically going to be exposed. So they're not going to show you that much. We're going to get these interviews. They'll tell you how great it is, but they are not going to show you. They are not going to peel back the curtain.
It's the new.
So let's talk about some of the gameplay mechanics and the design of taking a tabletop game and making it a first-person RPG.
Yeah, so our creative process starts with the 5th edition. And then we'll take whatever clan, I can't say which clans, and go, how do we make that into an act?
Do not pre-order it.
Experience. So obviously on a tabletop RPG, you're sat there. If you want to do something, you can open the book, turn to the page, look at the little rules, roll the dice. You don't have time for that in an action RPG. You've got to be thinking on your feet, moving fast. So that's where we put a lot of our efforts. How can we make those fantasies and those experiences a fluid action experience where you can just stay immersed? And that's one of the reasons we also...
Yeah, I mean, this is my first RPG talk. Now, again, he's doing an interview. I don't want to blame this guy specifically, but we were just talking about this is the studio's first RPG, and they're acting like it's a big challenge, taking a pen and paper system and turning it into a video game. That's your job. That is the bare minimum. And there are many studios who've done this many, many times. That's not what they're thinking about when they're making a new game. They're thinking about how can we make something of quality, not just making a system into a digital art form. It's actually just meant to be your bread and butter. So if they're really this far back, that's a concern. He might just be dumbing it down for the interview, sure, but really I want to hear about the quality of the game. I don't need these softball questions about, oh, how do you develop an RPG? Oh, it must be so challenging for you making a video game out of it. Come on.
I chose first person to make it just really immersive. You can just be in that fantasy.
Your experience in the world rather than being an observer, I think, when at the top over a game. Still great games, just I want to be in it,
Yes, exactly. You're in it. You're in the world of darkness. You are in this secret world in Seattle that's sort of hiding in plain sight.
So how does your team go about taking spells and abilities out of the books and turning them into an in-game mechanic, and how do you decide what's going to make the cut and what might not work?
Boring. I don't care about this. I just want to hear about what we're actually going to get from the game. Again, it's more of the softball stuff. What are we going to put in there? Again, use Bloodlines 1 as a reference point. Meet that standard, and then we'll see what else you're going to bring to the table.
Absolutely. I mean, there is some trial and error, and we work very closely with the World of Darkness team. So, we did one just last week, just before we came out.
Okay.
The last clan.
At least they're working with the teams there.
There's a lot in there, so you have a lot to choose from, and then we pick the sort of key ones that we think are really key to the fantasy, and sort of also the gameplay experience, right? As players are coming in, one person might want the up-close sort of action experience. You can see in the trailer, it focuses quite a lot on that.
Don't believe that that's
might
gameplay.
Want a more distant, strategic, I'm the prowling in the dark, right? So we try to pick abilities that will create, sort of package around that you can play.
If there's at least different strategies you can incorporate I'll at least give them the benefit of the doubt. So if you can play it as more of a stealth game, if there's skills set around that, and then there's melee combat, and then there's guns, I'll be happy if they can at least achieve that. I am honestly worried that it'll be, yeah, it's an RPG, you've got choices, but the combat is absolutely a nothing, and it's pretty much just a walking sim in all but name. That was a concern to me. I think about something like the Silent Hill 2 remake, where you've got an inexperienced team, kind of like the Chinese Room, making a remake to a real classic title. I see some similar comparisons at work here when it comes to Silent Hill 2 remake Bloodlines 2. So just hearing that they're at least talking mechanics, talking about what you can do in the game from an RPG perspective, that's at least slightly promising.
We do, as we say, make some creative choices. We get to add some things to the IP in order to get it to work for an action game. And Paradox is really, World of Darkness are really supportive of that.
Hope it's not
the thing
a
I love
pure
here about
action
this,
game.
especially when it has a pen and paper archetype. It's there's what's accurate and then there's what's fun. Can you elaborate more on like creating my own vampire? Like, I'm a big fantasy guy, right? You can play a mage, but wait a minute, what type of mage? Frost mage, fire mage, lightning mage, arcane mage?
Exactly, and with Vampire the Masquerade, there isn't just one type of vampire, right? You've got all the clans, each of them offering a different experience. And I'd say even within those, so when you pick a clan, there's still multiple ways to play within that clan. Can't really say much more about that yet. We'll be talking about that all more soon as we talk about the clans.
I mean, have they developed it? That would be my question. It's one thing to say you don't want to talk about it, but have you actually delivered on what you're sort of discussing now? I'd be questioning if there are multiple choices you can make, and then there's subclasses essentially within that. I don't believe that. I don't believe it's going to be that complex. So I think it's more the case of not wanting to essentially undersell the game right now. Better to say nothing. If we're going to undersell you, it'll probably be when the game comes out, or very close. Probably just not going to mention it at all until your money's been taken.
The coolest thing about this world is it's a modern type of world, but you have supernatural elements. What does that open up for your team creatively when you're able to go down that rabbit hole of supernatural elements?
One of the reasons we really like the Vampire the Masquerade IP is it's very grounded, right? It's the whole what if vampires were real? Sort of a way we quickly explain to people. It's kind of like John Wick, right? There's this whole other world hidden among you.
The world building.
Yeah, and it's grounded. And at VTM, we pride ourselves on making grounded, believable, authentic experiences, sort of mature storytelling. So this for us is probably one of the main ways we would...
Basically the Harry Potter philosophy, where rather than it being pure fantasy, it's fantasy, a small piece of fantasy, but in the real world. You could use Cyberpunk as an example of that in a way where it's sci-fi in a sense, but it's still grounded in the real world, so I guess that's what he's referring to.
Big thing in RPGs across all boards is always pacing. How do you deal with pacing in your game and to make sure that you're not leveling up too fast or not leveling up too slow, and making sure that they're experiencing the world and not just rushing through everything trying to min-max, I guess is the way to say.
Yeah, a lot of that is in the player's hands, their speed, but we try to, there's we often say the golden path in games. There'll be the path that people are typically walking on. And we try to put things to tempt you off it as you go, to kind of slow you down. But ultimately, it's up to you, the player. What kind of player are you? How fast do you want to play it? How slow? Do you want to smell the roses? Do you want to go around Seattle, check what's in that back alley? That's up to you.
That's just generic video game stuff. I doubt they've even gone that far with the development process. If what the interviewer is essentially talking about is, can you just choose the best possible skills, the best path, and then it'll be easy for you? I'm sure you can do that in any game, but this is a single player title. I don't think everyone cares that much. They want to have a fun experience. So all I hope for is fun, interesting skills, not just damage goes up by 10%. You always want skills where there's a bit of give and take, I find, where you're really debating choices. You're spending half an hour in the menu screen because you're not 100% sure what you want to pick. It's not obvious what might be useful to you, and it often comes down to your playstyle. It should be about fun as well. So hopefully they put it in there, but I really don't think that they've gone that far with it. This seemed like a bit of a generic answer, and I'm sure he's media trained.
When does the game come out?
It comes out fall 24.
Too
Wait another
soon.
year, a whole another year.
We're going to have a year.
It's only been in development for 2 years or something. 3 years it'll be next year. It's fine to get pumped, I suppose, and the game's been announced a long time ago, but wanting it to come out sooner, it's not a good thing. It's going to release, and it's going to be a joke, most likely, after 3 years. It's going to need more time in the oven. They're, of course, not going to get it. That seems to be the modern video game way anyway. Most products are rushed, but this one couldn't be more rushed. Paradox just seem to want to rid their hands of this mess, which is why they brought on a studio who were happy to do this on the cheap. And again, not having a go at this guy specifically. This is the hand he's been dealt. But Sumo Digital, their publisher, that is what they pitched, that they were going to rush out this game. So we will see. I'm sure they'll give it their best shot, but I'm not confident.
And there's a lot to talk about, including this.
Looking forward to it. And in the meantime, where can people find more information about your game?
So we have a website, bloodlines2.com, but you can also look up the Chinese room and all our channels. And yeah, there's a trailer to watch today.
Again, you can go to their website for more information. It's because they haven't shown a lot of this game. They're not going to be showing much of this game at all, I don't think, until it comes out. You're not going to see it all. They're not going to pull back that curtain, because once they do, you're going to see the mess, the state that the game is in. We've had it so many times. Think of original release Cyberpunk. Very curated. What was shown, extremely curated once the truth was out and you knew it was a complete mess, certainly on certain consoles. So there's no way that Bloodlines 2 is not going to be the same. They're not going to show it all off. They're not going to give you a free demo or something like that, because that might embarrass them. So that is why you can go and get more info off the website, where they'll tell you can pre-order the game, as we've seen in this video a couple of times. Sure, they're happy to take your money, but actually show the working product? No, that is asking too much.
Including a trailer that talks about the Chinese room and how we work on the title.
And then just as a fun bonus question, because you're creative director, what are some of the challenges you've been doing, like a single player game as opposed to like a game as a service?
What?
So for me personally, I've worked
Game
both.
as a service.
I think one of the pleasures of working on a single player game is the being able to craft every moment and know there'll be someone engaged and thrilled and watching it there. Games as a service, I think, is just almost another ballpark, right? So Chinese Room, we're very much about those single player experiences, strong single player narratives.
Okay then, so basically he's worked on games as a service titles. Bit of a generic answer once again. Now, the interview itself, I mean, this guy seems fine. He's got experience in the industry. He's a genuine developer of video games. Again, Gears, Tactics, some other titles on his resume. I'm sure he's a competent developer, which I would not say about everyone who worked at Hardsuit Labs. You have a look at some of those people, not necessarily good. Certainly most of them. So I don't, again, see Chinese Room as a bad studio. It's the mindset here. Paradox listening and taking on Sumo Digital's proposal to make a quick game, get it out the door without spending too much money. For me, that's just really disappointing, because Paradox have had a chance. They are giving Bloodlines almost a second chance by not letting Hardsuit Labs completely ruin it, which is what would have happened if they continued to go down the path with them. But rather than take a step back, lick their wounds, and get this done properly, they seem happy to rush this game out. So any, I suppose, dialogue from the developers, any of that marketing, you should not believe it. You should wait until there is genuine footage that you know is actual gameplay. You can see the UI, you can see exactly what the gameplay loop is like. Does it have those hubs from Bloodlines 1? Does it have high quality story, quests, character building, skills? Does it have what you actually want? Because until they show that and prove that, it is all just words. I don't expect them to show a lot of the game, certainly not until it's very close to release, and then it's purely going to be a marketing push in such a way where they're not confident in the game. That is what I'm thinking. But again, I'll give it a fair chance. I don't want to hate it. It's fine to laugh at it. But if they can actually prove me wrong, then I'll be the first to put my hand up. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.